All right, let's have this conversation now with Father Michael Lapsley, who's the President, Healing of Memories Global Network. Father, I hope it's a better line. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Let's talk about your reflections. I mean, it's been 10 years since the Marikana tragedy.
Anniversaries are always very significant, and clearly Marikana Massacre was the greatest horror and even tragedy of our democratic era. So I think it's a very sobering moment, and obviously our hearts go out to the families of the 34 miners who were killed on that day, but also the others who were killed on the previous day, including a number of police. But I think we have to ask ourselves, what have we done in terms of righting the wrongs of the Marikana Massacre? What have we done to change the living conditions of the mine workers there? But what has happened in terms of the prosecutions that were recommended by the Parliament Commission? So I think it's very difficult for grieving people to heal when they still have unanswered questions and no one has been truly found accountable for the killing of their loved ones.
And I was going to touch on that point to say, we talk about the healing process and the importance of it getting underway, but in the absence of answers, in the absence of accountability, how difficult is it going to be for the families to do what some are saying, which is to potentially move forward in this particular journey?
Well, I think, Bongiwe, you've already spelled out the challenge. It is extremely difficult for any people to heal when they have the unanswered questions and they don't see accountability. I think if they saw transformation of the villages around the Lonmin mines, if we saw the living conditions improving, and they saw those who were responsible being made to account, that healing would be much easier. Now, obviously, when your loved one has been mercilessly killed, in some ways the grief is permanent. But there is balm on those wounds when they see accountability and they see the questions being answered. So I think it's a solemn day of reflection, not just for those immediately affected, but all of us, the people of South Africa, whether you're talking about the role of President Ramaphosa, the role of the cabinet, the role of the police commissioner in the Northwest, as well as the actual people. I'm sure some of the people who use those R5 weapons are also, when they look into the mirror, they know that they were party to something very, very terrible.
And we talk about, those who were making some decisions at the time. You've mentioned President Cyril Ramaphosa. How much of a contributing factor would you say this is to, this process of healing not moving ahead as speedily as some are hoping for it to be? Because even on a day like today, some are still hoping that he is going to visit Marikana one day.
Yes, I hope that our president will find it within himself to go to there. And clearly the Parliament Commission said he was not liable. But he, the mine worker, had become one of the mine owners. So in a sense, one would hope that the president would be championing the change in living conditions of mine workers, especially he himself has a mine worker background. And the tragedy is sometimes when people change from being the mine workers to the mine owners, their interests change, and we don't see the scale of a commitment to transforming unequal society in terms of those who are at the bottom of our society.
And Father, I'm going to, talk about healing, particularly from your own personal journey. You went through something very harrowing and you had to also begin your own process of healing those many years ago, and it's something you're helping others to do. What would be your advice when it comes to those involved in this Marikana story, where to begin when it comes to healing, and your advice to even the families themselves on how they begin to start that particular process, because we understand how difficult and vulnerable it can be at times?
I think it's important to say that if we have lost loved ones, like I've lost limbs, in some ways the grief is lifelong. They will always, and anniversaries will be particularly painful. But if you know that you're loved and supported and accompanied, and the pain of what you happened is acknowledged, then you can travel a journey of healing. And there's even a dimension of healing when the loved ones hear people saying, but what was done was wrong, it was unacceptable. In a democratic South Africa, that mine workers should be cured in that way. It has to be morally completely unacceptable. So the moral dimension also plays a part in the journey of healing. But also we need long-term support. Sometimes kind of Westernness says, oh, well, look, you must get on with it and get on with your life. Well, what do you mean? The breadwinner is no longer there. My loved one is no longer there. But I don't think we have to be prisoners forever of our pain. We can also take back our agency, and even working for accountability is part of the healing journey as well. But knowing that you have companions who are supporting you on the way. And some of the journalists, people like Professor Alexander and Zagrig Maranovich, people who went out to find the truth, I'm sure help people to heal as well.
And when you then also look at another layer, the mine, in an effort to also try and assist, has, placed some of these widows in positions within the mine, and they are working there. And I remember even last night, some of them were saying that this also brings up the wounds of what they went through and what their husbands have gone through. Does this help at all, or does it also further prolong the healing process?
Well, I think that the mines take responsibility towards providing employment is also appropriate. But of course, it can at times be bittersweet that you are employed, but you remember that your parent, for example, died in this terrible way. So I think it will be important that also some of those assistance to the children be not just to come and become mine workers, but also to play other parts in society, scholarships to be able to become breadwinners themselves, and not just to be locked into being a mine worker forever across the generations. I was struck by some of those stories last night as well, where you've had sometimes 3 generations of mine workers. It's almost like there's no escape from the mines.
That's true. And thank you so much, Father Michael, for your time this afternoon. Do appreciate it. That is Father Michael Lapsley, President of the Healing of Memories Global Network, as we look at the healing process in the Marikana story. And of course, during the course of the show, we'll continue to pay special focus on this, and still speaking to a man who was among those commanding the tactical response team on the day on the 16th of August.